Hi, I'm Mark Hobie, producing artistic director at Paper Mill Playhouse. All of us here at Paper Mill hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy during this time. While our theater is physically closed right now, we wanted to find a way to bring a theatrical experience right to you, to bring theater into your lives, into your homes. And so we've dug into our vaults and found these Humanities symposiums from the past. We'll be streaming them live each Thursday night at 7 p.m. Just tune in to our Paper Mill Facebook page and have a theatrical experience right from your couch. Hope to see you here each week.
Didn't we see each other? I do beg your pardon.
Ladies and gentlemen, have your attention, please. Thank you very much. You in the back there with the funny hair, come on. It's up here, all right? Thank you. Now, I understand there is a great public interest in this case. And that's why I've asked the manager at this here theatre to allow me to question these suspects in the public forum. We planned that. I'm sure Miss Thorne will appreciate this opportunity to take a well-deserved evening off from a performance here in The Prick of the Thorn. But make no mistake, just because we're in a theatre and not a constabulary doesn't mean I'm going to allow a lot of loud carryings-on like takes place here most evenings. Ladies, keep your fruits and vegetables in your handbags. Gentlemen, let's have no catcalls, boos, jeerings, or the like. No shouting out, get off the stage, you talentless vagrant, or you call that acting like you do here most nights. This is a legal proceeding, and you should all behave accordingly. Now that said, let's get on with the questioning of these here suspects regarding the disappearance of the Victoria diamond. I'm sure you'll all agree that all had motive and opportunity to steal the precious gem. But who had the means? That's the question. Was it his sister, Lady Hannah Belsize Park, the sibling who promised that the valuable gem would be displayed at the Great London Museum? Was it Lord Hampstead Heath, gentleman friend of Lord Harry, who claims that the diamond was promised to him as winnings in a billiard game? Was it Miss Angela Thorne, an American actress with an attachment to Lord Harry, who claims that the diamond was promised to her as a token of affection?
Ha! Love? Harry didn't know the meaning of the word. He loved horses, gambling, and billiard games. No, he couldn't be bothered with that.
Oh, he must have loved billiards, ma'am, as he died clutching his billiard chalk. No doubt a final tribute to his love for the venerable pastime. But I gather, ma'am, that you don't feel that Lord Harry's attentions toward Miss Thorne were reputable.
Little you know, Harry loved me. A pure love. None of that hanky-panky snatch and grab you're all thinking of. He was a gentleman at all times. He never laid a hand on me.
How could he ever love you? You're an actress.
Oh, and worse, an American.
Hey, you're on my stage now. Show a little respect. Hundreds love me here every night.
Well, hundreds have loved her. Let's just leave it at that. My dear friend Harry seemed oddly taken with this, bit of orange peel. Harry may have loved her, but she never loved him, I assure you, Sergeant. She wanted the Victoria diamond.
He's just jealous because I told him to keep his frisky hands to himself. I wasn't going to be another one of your bits of trumpet. Lord Harry never laid an untoward hand on me. He loved me like Romeo loved Juliet, like Benedict loved Beatrice, like Caesar loved Cleopatra.
I think you're all wrong. The one thing his lordship dearly loved was a good stiff one. Port.
And lastly, Mrs. Carnaby, proprietress of the Mask and Mine pub, frequent haunt of Lord Harry after performances at this here theatre. And now, back to the Victoria diamond. You all lay claim to the ownership of this valuable gem, which has now gone missing. Lady Hannah Belsize Park, when was the last time you saw the diamond?
Not in many years, Sergeant. My brother kept it locked away in his safe. He couldn't be bothered with the finer things in life, like jewelry, fine furniture, poetry. Keeping company with lowlives like Miss Thorne changed my brother into a different person. He was no longer the fine-mannered man I once knew.
Lowlifes.
Indeed. Why, the last time I had him over to tea, he proceeded to stir his tea with his little finger.
Oh.
Imagine! Such behavior was not learned growing up in our parents' home, I can assure you. I wish he had had more friends like Hammy here. Lord Heath, I mean. He is a fine gentleman with most excellent manners.
Lord Hammy. I mean Heath. Manners are hardly at question here. Now, Lord Heath, when was the last time you saw the diamond?
I've never laid eyes upon it. Harry promised it to me after a rather competitive billiards game, but was never able to deliver.
I see. And what about you, Miss Thorne?
Harry showed me the diamond when I first came to London. It was so beautiful. I told him how much I love jewels. A girl gets tired of wearing paste, Sergeant. Harry promised that someday it would be mine. Of course, I thought that he meant we were going to be married.
Where were you when you last saw the diamond, miss?
In Harry's living room.
Then she knows the combination to the safe. How do we know she hasn't got the diamond? Maybe my adult brother gave her the diamond and didn't tell any of us.
Did you actually see Lord Harry put the diamond into the safe, miss?
No. He carried it into the room in a wooden case lined with velvet. He carried it out of the room the same way. I just assumed...
Perhaps then the diamond never made its way back into the safe.
Exactly right, Sergeant.
And what do you know about that, missus?
The night before he died, his lordship came in after the performance, same as always. He sat in his private booth, same as always, but I happened to catch a glimpse of something when I took his coat. A box. A box of wood, just like the one Miss Thorne just described.
So he had the diamond on him that night.
It wasn't in the safe after all.
Tell me everything you saw that night, Mrs. Carnaby.
His lordship had several visitors that night before Miss Thorne wandered in about 11:30. One was plainly Lord Ethier, a frequent visitor to my establishment.
He and I only met by chance that night. I had taken in Miss Thorne's performance and was seeking refreshment.
The other was hooded with a veil, but had the unmistakable shape of her ladyship.
How else was I to be seen in such a place? I needed to speak with my brother about his promise to display the diamond at the London Museum. He had vowed to deliver the diamond earlier that day, but I should have known better than to rely upon Harry.
Her ladyship and Lord Harry didn't sound like they was having a mere chat, Sergeant. More like a shouting match, if you asks me. They each downed a glass of one of me best ones, and she stormed down in a huff. This chap strolled in right after. 2 ports later, he left, and Miss Thorne shows up. 2 more ports later, she leaves, and buggers off as well. Busy little booth, wasn't it?
He said he wasn't feeling well and was going home to rest, so I said, good night. It was the last time I ever saw him alive.
He said that to me too as well when he first arrived. He was pale as an orphan child, poor dear.
But no one saw the diamond that night.
No! He had said he would bring it to me before the week was out.
I had no idea he had the diamond on his person that very night.
I didn't know either, I swear.
So he came to the Mask and Mine pub with the intention of giving the diamond to someone, but instead gave it to no one, despite promises to the contrary.
That's not exactly true, Sergeant. His lordship did give the diamond to someone.
And who would that be, miss?
Me. He also gave me this, and made me promise if any wrong came to him that I would hand it over to you, sir.
I fear I may be murdered. All around me conspire for the Victoria diamond. Whoever has done this to me is both clever and desperate. The diamond will stay with Mrs. Carnaby until my killer has been brought to justice. Signed, Lord Harry St. John Belsize.
Oh my, Harry, murdered. But the coroner said he died of natural causes.
Murder? What a horrible thing to happen to poor Harry.
Sergeant, wouldn't there be some obvious sign of foul play?
Oh, not necessarily, sir. Many toxins and poisons can be introduced into the system, leaving little or no trace of the poisonous method. And considering the number of deaths that occur weekly in this teeming metropolis, a place where human life is worth 2 a penny, it wouldn't surprise me if the coroner relied purely on external signs and ignored his duty to fully examine his lordship's rotting corpse surgically.
Thank you,
opening the stomach.
Sergeant. We get the idea. No need to paint a picture.
What sort of toxins and poisons?
Well, a bit of cyanide in the port, some arsenic in his tea, or perhaps some more clever method of dispatch.
Poison? He was just going home to rest.
Rest in peace. Oh.
We are no longer investigating a theft, ladies and gentlemen, but the foul and unnatural murder of Lord Harry St. John Belsize. Although I pride myself on my deductory skills, I think this is a case better suited for London's topmost sleuth.
You mean
The great.
The one and only?
Pride of Baker Street.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes! It's Paper Mill Playhouse's Director of Education, Susan Spardell! Susan Spardell. Miss Spardell.
Yes.
While I interrogate these suspects further backstage,
Yes.
perhaps you could distract these fine folks with some highly informative discussion on the subject of mystery writing. I turn the proceedings over to you.
Thank you.
Come on, you lot, backstage with you!
They'll be back. Good evening, and thank you for joining us here this evening for our discussion on mystery writing. We're delighted that you're all here. Before we get into the panel discussion portion of the evening, I wanted to just point out a few upcoming events that are in your program. We have on March 15th, Meet Arthur Miller. Please, everyone, cross your fingers. Mr. Miller is not yet confirmed. If Mr. Miller himself is not here, we will have a panel discussion of his work, so we hope that you will join us for that. And as you can see, we have many things coming up for the spring, including, this being our 60th anniversary, a wonderful gala in May that will celebrate 60 years of outstanding accomplishment here at Paper Mill. In addition, wonderful productions to come for the rest of this year. It is my pleasure now to introduce a wonderful panel that we have gathered this evening. We have with us several authors and writers and experts on the mystery genre. And please help me welcome, first, author Justin Scott.
Thank you.
And following Justin is the Executive Director of Mystery Writers of America, Priscilla Ridgway. Thank you. And next we have Carol Higgins Clarke. And to lead our discussion this evening, one of the brightest lights of New Jersey Network, Amber Edwards. I'm going to check on that motley crew backstage and leave them to their work.
Good evening. I'm sitting in my usual portion of the stage here. I wanted to start by asking our experts why are mysteries so popular? Why do they continue to be so popular? And Priscilla Ridgway, I know, has some statistics that she can share with us.
That's the nice thing about being administrator. I don't have to be creative. Some of you will have gotten, I hope, a press release that I put together for a project that we're doing in conjunction with Barnes & Noble. And the reason I brought it, other than to let you know to look forward to this program, is that USA Today did a series of statistical analyses of what teens love to read. And it basically came out the 53% of kids, teens, like to read mysteries. And that is the only recent statistic we've seen. The last that I saw that was done on adult fiction was done back in 1986 by Publishers Weekly, because quite frankly, publishers don't want us to know how well we do. So it just, there are fluctuations in every other form of literature. I'm sorry?
Can we have some more juice on Priscilla's mic?
Hello? Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. That there have been fluctuations, great fluctuations in all other form of literature, but the mystery is still strong, and basically we like to think the strongest.
But Priscilla, why is that? What's the element? Is it that readers like to go along and solve it as they go? Is there a formula, if you will, that people know?
That's a no, that's a no word. Excuse me for being, that's sort of an in-house joke, that in other genres there can be formulas. In the mystery, we say that there basically is not. I think that the reason that people like mysteries, and I like them myself, not just because I work for the organization, in order to give you a good story, they have to be very carefully and very precisely written, with beautiful use of language, and they tend to be very moral. And I like historical mysteries, especially ones that are historically accurate, because it sort of takes you away from where you are and gives you a vantage point of another era, another culture. I think call it escape literature, but what a wonderful way to get away.
Let's ask our writers. Justin, why do you like to write mysteries?
Well, first of all, we get the best readers. And it's really true. I lead a double life. I write mysteries sometimes, and I write thrillers other times. And I'm always struck by the mystery readers' basic literacy. I'll slip the occasional sentence into a thriller that I wouldn't dare try to pass off on a mystery fan. I think they like precision. I think they like quality. And I think what is driving all of us who get involved in a mystery, and I speak now as a reader, we all have a hope that one of these days we're going to work everything out. We're going to figure it all out. We're going to solve all of our own problems and the problems around us, and we're going to come up with the greatest idea in time rather than 2 or 3 days later, which is how most of us get our great ideas. And the hero of a mystery, like Sherlock Holmes, for instance, tends to tell us, well, yes, it's possible. If you learn to observe, you can be that sharp, that special. You'll no longer feel dumb anymore. When the state trooper pulls you over for doing 85, you'll be able to come up with some perfect line that makes him kind of tip his hat and say, I'm terribly sorry to have troubled you, sir. Just go on and we'll take care of this.
So then does perhaps the specter of Sherlock Holmes sit over the shoulder of any mystery or suspense writer, and that kind of set a standard? Carol?
I don't know about that. I just, when I got into mystery writing, it was, well, because of my mother, but
Mary Higgins
Clarke. I used to type her books for her, and we would talk about what worked in the plot and what didn't. And I think people out there like mysteries because in our own lives, so many things aren't solved. And in the news, as you can see, we all love to follow a mystery, like what's happened in the White House for the last 2 weeks. I mean, everyone's trying to figure out what happened. When we write a mystery and you read it, it's all figured out at the end, which gives a sense of satisfaction. It's all pulled together somehow. So you don't have to speculate endlessly. But I just think that they're entertaining. You hope to have the good guys win at the end. And it's a satisfactory form of reading, hopefully.
Are there rules that you're expected to follow in terms of, for example, if a gun is mentioned on page 16, something has to happen with or to that gun at some point in the story, or you're not playing fair with the reader?
I think that, I think there are rules. We probably don't really like to believe it, and I think the gun is an excellent example. But I think the rules are really the rules of any novel. If you're going to promise something, you have to deliver. And the rules of a novel say you should promise something, starting in the first sentence, first page.
I think the gun should always be explained somehow, whether it was a red herring or not, but you have to know why it was there. I think if you drop it, something has to come out at the end of why it was there.
Priscilla, you used the word moral in describing why you like mysteries, and I guess mysteries are the one form where we take human life very seriously. A body is discovered, a murder has been committed, and the whole rest of the story is devoted to solving that. Is that the morality you're talking about, or are you talking about a different kind of moral?
That and more. That the treatment of a body or the victim, or however you want to refer to them, usually is very sympathetic, whether it's by the police, the detective, or, of course, depends on why the person was killed. They could be just little rats. But I think that it's the treatment and the respect of human life, and in the solving of the mystery, at least somewhat realistic, moralistic judgment of why it was done. And if there is indeed judgment on the criminal, one way or the other, then I think that in itself is a sort of a moral judgment.
We get into a funny kind of thing with this. I think that all good mysteries elevate the value of life and decry murder, and yet we like, quote, a murder mystery. When you go on book tour around the country, you go to bookstores and sign books, they give you either a coffee mug from their store or a book bag from their store. And if you're traveling light, you take the book bag, and if you're traveling heavy, you take the mug. But I find now when I walk around New York carrying one of those book bags, I feel a little weird sometimes. I was carrying one the other day, heading off to the gym, and it said, murder with an altitude. And I thought, what? Another time I'm out, I had a t-shirt on that said, Murder, Inc., and I saw someone look and kind of flinch. Because if I weren't really thinking about mysteries, what exactly am I going down the street, boasting about?
Well, we have made it kind of a game. We were talking about those weekends where you devote a whole weekend. We have a game going on right now. We have actors up here in costumes, and I imagine you out there are trying to solve it. So we do. It's a puzzle involving real people.
That's right.
Well, real fictional people.
The interactive mysteries, there's one up at the Mohonk House up in upstate New York where they have a weekend-long mystery where you go on Friday night and all the authors and people involved in acting out the mystery do so on stage, and then you have all weekend to ask them questions. And then on Sunday, each group gets together and gets on stage and they solve the mystery, usually in a humorous fashion. And there are prizes given to the the team that's the most accurate, and then to the most creative, and it's really a lot of fun. And everybody really gets into it.
Well, if you've ever been to the Mohonk House, it's a fabulous Gothic structure that's just perfect for murders. So many mysteries seem to be set in a finite place and a specific place. Carol, do you feel like you have to set your stories in a specific delineated world?
Well, it makes it easier to keep your characters all in one place. My first book was set on a cruise ship mostly, so anybody who was going to get off that was in trouble. So I did that there, and then in small towns, but it makes it easier. I'm more finite in a sense of time. They take place in about a week's time, so that everything happens, and I know what's going to happen in the climax scene towards the end of the week, and that makes it a little easier too.
Justin, your series is set in a small town where presumably everybody knows everybody. Yeah,
it's a small town in Connecticut, and Ben Abbott is a real estate agent, and he was born and brought up there. And it's kind of fun for the writer because basically everyone does know everyone else. And when I start a new book, I have to wonder how much do I want to invade the town and the reader's feelings with strange and new faces. And lately I've been having fun where I'll take some minor person in one book and then have them turn up dead in another book. Kind of, connect them all. And hopefully, you'll be reading that one and say, oh, I remember him from back then. Oh, I wonder what happened. Now he's dead.
Well, you have a series. Our series, once you get a character or you get a place, in your instance you have Connecticut and a character, do you feel like you have to just go with it, or can you chuck that and start somebody else?
Well, my fourth book is coming out next month, and Reagan Riley is my main character, and I'm still having fun with her, and I'll be writing a couple more books with her. So you really, I won't be abandoning her for a while. My book titles end in ED. The first one was set on a cruise ship, and so there was a murder on board, so I called it Decked. And then the second one, which was about a murderer at a pantyhose convention, I said, well, this has to be Snagged. So that's how I got going, Iced, and the new one is Twanged. And I'm speaking in Santa Barbara at the end of the month, and I just got the invitation in the mail, and it said, Carol Higgins Clarke, the author of Decked and Shagged, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, I like the idea of using a character for a while, as long as you can. I also use a different location with each book, which is good for me because I go and explore a different place and put Reagan Riley in a new town, and I learn about the town and use that as part of the mystery. So that helps keep it fresh for me.
Priscilla, was Arthur Conan Doyle the first writer to start? I know he started Holmes as a series, even killed him off at some point and had to bring him back because people were so upset. Was he the first to do that? That's kind of serialization?
I think so. I should know, but I don't.
But
I do think so.
It seems to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, he is not the father of the mystery, but he, I think, is the first of the serial characters.
Who is the father of the mystery?
Edgar Allan Poe.
Of course.
Of course.
The Edgar Awards.
That's right.
Justin, at what point do you feel like you have to stop a character that you've written and move on to somebody else? I mean, can you keep somebody alive indefinitely?
You basically hope that you get bored a book before the readers get bored. And you make the decision voluntarily. Sometimes, however, the decision is made for you or the publisher gets bored and calls up and says, I'm bored, therefore the readers must be bored. When you look at some of the good long-running series, characters can grow. They can get a little older, they can get a little smarter, or a little less dumb at least. Again, going back to to real life. I think that as long as you are coming up with a story that continues to grip, and you've got a voice that works, like Carol says, it's still fun for her to write with that character. Why not stay with that character? I must say, it's exciting when you start a new book that's not the character, and it's the truly blank page.
Must be scary.
You're traveling. You're into new territory. Beg pardon?
Must be scary, that blank page for a writer?
Well, we don't really have blank pages anymore. We have blank computer screens,
Blinking at us.
The great advantage of a computer screen is you can always turn to email and see if anybody has sent you something bright or witty. No, usually the blank page is exciting. It's when you're 120 pages into it, and it's beginning to dawn on you that you've committed yourself to this, and you have a good, clear beginning, and you have a wonderful idea for the end, and there's about 200 pages that are just sitting there, each one of them blank between where you are and where you want to be, and that's when it gets scary.
Or when your editor tells you it's not right.
Yes.
When because my books are humorous mysteries, I also have to be careful with murders because it's hard to have a body and then be yucking it up on the next page. But when I started writing Iced, I wrote 150 pages, and for some reason I thought this book should be more serious. So I had someone very depressed and someone whose mother had just died and this and that. I sent it in to my editor, and she called me up and she said, stop writing, this is not funny at all, come in and see me. And I was then so depressed, but she was right. For this series, also when your readers know what to expect when they pick up one of your books, to turn Reagan Riley into a depressing type of book would not have been, or even more serious. So I learned my lesson on that one. But since I have only written these so far, it's nice when I start a short story and I don't use her. That's the only chance I've had to start free.
Yeah.
And that's fun too, because it gives you another area to explore.
Yeah, and in and out with a short story. That's kind of neat.
Priscilla, you were telling me about these fan clubs, the mystery fan clubs, which seem to be fans of a character. There are Sherlock Holmes societies, we know that, but there are there are other fan clubs, and I said to you, how can you have a fan club for a dead author? And you said, of course you can have a fan club for a dead author because you have the character, and the character's alive.
Well, and also they're not going to argue back. But the Baker Street Irregulars, since we're talking about Sherlock Holmes,
The Baker Street
the
Irregulars.
Baker Street Irregulars, known as the BSI, is, I believe, the oldest and the most formal of the, at least, Sherlockian groups. And I would say there's probably some sort of a Sherlockian scion in every single city throughout the United States. I belong to about 4 or 5 myself, which means I should be a lot more knowledgeable than I am, but I'm not, BSI. But I do have a list in the office of the groups that are, had been formed to honor or study all of these different authors. There's one for Ellis Peters, who did the Brother Cadfael, among other things. Chesterton, the Trollop Society, of course, which I like. I got to use their fax machine for a while, and I always love to be able to say, use the Trollop line. See, who else?
I'm sure there must be Dashiell Hammett.
Oh, Dashiell Hammett, Nero Wolfe. I mean, you go down the list, and there are all of these fan groups, and basically, and some for living authors.
And I imagine there are collectors of the...
Avid collectors. I also have...
Save your first editions.
Yes.
Right?
No, the trick is to know what is going to be a valuable first edition. That's where people really vie with each other. But these groups get together, and they have newsletters, and they study the work. When I go to any of the signed meetings, they have quizzes, which I never can pass. And they just discuss, well, Sherlockian, it would be the canon, which is his entire body of work.
Canon, yes.
The canon.
Holmes was a man of science, and he was created by a doctor, a medical doctor, and he was created at a time when science seemed to be the solution to all of our problems. Did that sort of science-based solving of these problems, did that lead to the first, I guess you could call it a police procedural kind of story, or private eyes who actually used forensics and things to solve the crime?
It's the Holmes direction, yeah, to go to the great detail, more detail and less character. And I think as the books have moved along, people are spending a lot more effort on the tiny little bits and pieces, and rather than really following, a character that might really turn you on a lot.
Well, we now have the capacity to do DNA samples. I mean, in Holmes's time, the fingerprint was a fairly controversial thing.
I was also thinking that now in mysteries, I've used an answering machine, became important, a fax, a computer, and they didn't have those to use, and they become important for clues now that we use in mysteries a lot.
We have new sources of clues, and those were new clues in those days, because people didn't know about fingerprints. Most people.
Do we have more? Your character is an amateur. Ben Abbott is basically an amateur.
It's one of the genres of mysteries. Priscilla said we don't use the word formula, so we use genre instead. I remember one time I took my typewriter into Typewriter Man, and he took his pliers and he went like that, and he said, "There, it's fixed." I said, "You mean you just bent it?" He said, no, we don't bend, we shape. But we were talking about the question. There I am digressing.
We were talking about genres.
Yeah, genre.
Genres.
There's a bunch of genres around. Hardcore PI, that is in the Hammett or the Chandler mode of tough, hard-hitting, morose, trench coat wearing detective, male or female, doesn't matter. Then you have the amateur detective, who is more in the Holmes mode, except, and he's outside the police, like Holmes was. He's lending his services to the police, who by and large are not that thrilled with this offering on the table, but the author finds ways to make them take it. And the police can either be, well, originally the police were uneducated, such as with Holmes, and then we went to dumb police, and now we go to busy, distracted police, or venal, corrupt police, or police looking the other way. All of which allows the amateur to solve the crime and then often hand the solution to the police and let them run with the ball in the end. But the amateur in his heart and the reader in her heart knows that it was the amateur PI who saved the day.
And of course, the reader is presumably an amateur as well.
Not when they're done reading my book.
Carol, do you find that with a woman character, are you able to have fun breaking some rules and myths about what a crime-solving person can do?
Well, I think that there have been women characters who preceded me, like Sue Grafton and Sarah Paretsky, and a number of them. So I don't really think about that much when I'm writing. I just have Reagan Riley as a PI, and actually I just have things happen to her usually when she's skiing in Aspen or at a friend's wedding in Miami, that type of thing. And her nosy nature just gets her involved. So I don't really think about that too much, actually, when I'm working on it.
A lot of characters in mysteries don't seem to go out looking for trouble. So you were saying people come to Holmes. He's not out there snooping around.
He sits in this
study.
And actually, I think I'd sit here too. This is a very pleasant little spot. And it comes at him. And you're doing that, Carol, bless you. And I usually do it. There's a subgenre of the reluctant detective. And a lot of the stories start that way. I can't stand another case. There's a knock on the door, I have a problem. It may be the writer's way of saying, that blank page is a little scary.
So many wonderful mysteries seem to be set in England. You think of that as just, that's the place to be. Why?
Great question.
Is it the fog?
I was going to say the atmosphere there is great.
Is it Holmes? I mean, think of all the most famous detectives, or not, sleuths.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think Holmes may be a big part of the answer, that's a wonderful question. The whole amateur concept is much more British than American. American, at the same time that you have Agatha Christie making her bumbling amateur, you have Hammett with his characters in San Francisco who are real hard-boiled. I was about to say Chandler, except he was British. He just happened to come here and live in L.A. I like that question. I don't know the answer.
Anyone else want to take a crack at it?
No.
The setting often is a character.
Should be. In any novel, the setting should be possibly the second most interesting character.
Do you think that it's important to have a bit of mystery about your main character?
Like Holmes?
Like Holmes, for example?
It's hard when you have a series character, though, to keep...
to have secrets.
To have secrets,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
When you keep on writing about the same person. I think that you just have to make them interesting and basically likable so that people will want to pick up another book and read about him or her again. I don't know about
I'm dealing with that problem right now. I've just published a new Ben Abbott in England called Frostline, and some people who have read it have said to me, it's darker. And I'm not sure if it's a compliment or not, but I realize there's a whole side to the character that I have in my head but I've never put down. And I'm wrestling with the thought of doing a dark novel about him, which is probably not going to thrill the fans who think he's a very funny man.
Might not thrill your editor either. Yeah. I already went through that. Yeah.
Well, we have the collision between what does the writer want to do. Maybe you're going to be tired of your character before the public is, and you'll say, hey, I want to do something else.
Well, I think I would do something else on the side, but as long as my books are being bought by people who like them, I would keep writing Reagan until I thought she was stale. But I think you can always do something else on the side, like the short stories. Or
didn't Arthur Conan Doyle do that? He wrote all these stories that were not Sherlock Holmes stories,
right.
And he was so upset that people liked the Holmes best, and he was never quite as good in the other ones?
Well, he did more, I think, serious literary pieces and histories, and those are the ones that he was most proud of. And the Holmes basically was just something that he started to do when he needed money. And he would have much, I think, preferred to have been known for his serious pieces.
Well, I would imagine a lot of mystery writers would like to think of themselves as writing serious pieces of literature? Or does the very fact that it's called mystery somehow put it into some other category, that it's not literary? It's not literary fiction.
Watch it.
Well, yeah,
I'm just using the words I hear, you know? I go to the bookstore and I see literary fiction, mystery, you know, thriller, sci-fi.
I think the best mysteries around are those written by extremely talented people who hadn't really thought they were being that serious. It's always a temptation, you know, and anytime you make a couple of bucks on something, you begin to think, wow, I'm kind of smart, you know, and I've got a lot to share with the world, and I'm going to tell them
Nobel
I'm
Prize
smart.
is calling.
I'm going to write something serious. I'm going to make the next book dark.
I think it really is just about telling the best possible story you can, and do you like to read what you're writing? That's what I think. If I'm sitting at the computer and I can make myself laugh, or I get excited about a character, or I can be walking down the street and say, I know what I'm going to do, and then you get excited. That's really a part of the creative process, and I'm not thinking about whether I'm writing literature or just something that will entertain people for a few hours. And, you know, because again, when I tried to do something more what I thought would be profound, it didn't work. I think my thing always is to make it humorous when I'm writing. I can't, or at least what I think is, you know, quirky characters and that kind of thing.
We have a lot of longevity as a group. I mean, if you know, you look at the writers of the 30s, you look at Chandler and Hammett, and you look at J.P. Marquand, who is a magnificent writer, it would be a little bit difficult to find Marquand in print these days. But because there's a devoted mystery readership, mystery guys stay in print.
I just have,
No.
I was just going to tell the story. My mother was on Larry King's radio show years back, and a caller called in and said, Mrs. Clarke, I love your books. I love them very much. And she said, oh, thank you. He said, now, generally, I only read literature. So, I mean, that's
why I got upset.
But I think mysteries have gained a lot more respectability in the last 20 years, don't you, Priscilla? I mean,
I hope so.
But there's been such a growth of mystery stores and mystery clubs, and all around the country there are so many little mystery bookshops everywhere you go, and so many people who come into them and get their newsletters, and they've really gained in popularity a lot, I think, and people don't look down their noses on them, I think, maybe the way they did 30 years
mysteries
ago,
used to be
20
sold in the cookbook section.
Yeah.
Or they invented the brown paper wrapper for mysteries. But the only thing I was going to speak to that these two can't, because they are authors and thereby modest, is that one of the joys that I have in my job is that I work with the nicest people in the world, and they are mystery writers. And most of my friends and our members, I think, would say that they write to entertain. They really do not have a preconception of being a great author. And you can't say that about a lot of successful mainstream authors. So we're just fun. And also, as to the coming out of the brown paper bag, I've sort of considered it one of the fiats of my job is to try and make that happen. And I don't know if any of you saw the inserts that were done in the New York Times Sunday section the weekend before the banquet, which is end of April every year.
This is the Mystery Writers of America annual gig where they give out the Edgar Awards.
Right, which is the last Thursday in April every year. And I did a piece with the New York Times book advertising. It was a separate insert about the size of a TV guide dedicated to the mystery and written to an audience of people that might consider themselves a tad intellectual to read mysteries. And some of the articles were the most brilliant pieces brilliant essays I've ever read. And people were very, very impressed with it. And the readership was 4.4 million in a magazine that unfortunately has a shelf life longer than most books. So we do what we can.
Who are the mystery readers? Are they everybody? Is there if I were a marketer and I had a certain product to sell, and I dialed up all these statistical analyses, what would be the profile of the mystery reader?
I don't think there is one. I mean, President Clinton runs around with mysteries and...
I was waiting for you to finish that
when
sentence.
he's not elsewhere, occupied elsewhere.
Well chosen
He
word.
creates mysteries, yes.
He creates conundrums. You write mysteries. I don't really think you can profile mystery readers because Churchill was a great mystery reader. FDR, in fact, we gave FDR a raven for a reader because he loved mysteries so much. Mystery lovers are literally everywhere. You see people running around construction sites with paperbacks sticking out of their hip pockets. So I really don't think it's limited at all. And the field is so very broad, and the availability of books. Graham Greene was a mystery reader, or excuse me, a mystery reader and writer. And I don't think an awful lot of people who are Graham Greene fans would recognize that, yes, he was a mystery writer. So I don't think there is a limit.
Are the mystery readers, the dedicated book buyers and library goers, are they the same people who are tuning into mystery on public television and the films that are made into mysteries and plays like this, which is based on a mystery, or is that a way of broadening the audience? You're judging television series.
Yes,
for the mystery for
the Edgar Allan
Awards.
Poe Awards. I was a judge for the best television episode, so I had a lot of tapes to watch of the best mystery episode. And yeah, I think if you like mysteries, there are so many good shows on the air and plays, and I can't think that people wouldn't enjoy every form of mystery that's offered.
That Law and Order is. I mean, I
one
guess,
of the shows.
Yeah, I guess I don't think of it as a mystery show.
But they're all different kinds.
Yes.
Like the X-Files has more of a supernatural bent to it on certain episodes, and whereas Law and Order is more police procedural. Then there's The Practice and Diagnosis Murder. A lot of different shows out there, and they all have a different slant to them. So,
and there've been a lot of plays and films based on homes written by people who were not Arthur Conan Doyle, and taking that character and building on it. You call that a pastiche, right? Mm-hmm. And that is probably something that riles a few purists.
Yes. It's funny because the author who wrote the 7% Solution spoke during the BSI functions in the first week in January in New York.
The 7% Solution was the film that dealt with Holmes'
cocaine
addiction.
First a book, and then it went on to be a movie.
And it also provided psychological background on him as to why he wanted to be a detective, which is not in any of the Conan Doyle books.
It was a great speculation. Unlike a lot of pastiches, that particular book's really worth looking at, the book and the movie. He really added something. He took some big leaps of imagination and said, oh, as Amber says, oh, that's why Holmes is a detective. Nobody ever asked that question before.
No.
Mm-hmm. We just said, oh, he likes science. Well, this man came up with a more human answer. It's worth checking out.
Yeah. Priscilla, you were saying that in some ways there's a growing popularity of the, I guess you call them cozies. I'm learning all these great terms tonight of genres. Cozies where there's less emphasis on forensics and science and more on old-fashioned methods of just motive.
What I said earlier was not cozies, but historicals.
Okay, where they didn't have all the science.
Yeah, it was before science, and also there now, if you name an era in anywhere in the world, there's probably a mystery series being written about it. Two of my favorites are about ancient Rome. There's another that deals with Elizabethan theater and an actual touring theater company, and it is accurate to how it would have been if you were an Elizabethan playwright. It's fascinating stuff. And I think a lot of the reason that people are going back to it is the audience perhaps is a bit oversaturated with the female PI, with forensic science, with all of the technical methods of solving crime, and the author's always looking for a way to catch his audience's attention, and I think that's why they switched to historicals. And at the moment, they are pretty much the hottest items, I think.
So those are the first
I think
editions
so.
to save, right? The historicals. Those are the first editions to save for those people who are going to start collecting, right?
Yes, but you have to find the new author and their first collectible book. It's interesting.
Are we? I'm looking at my watch and I see Susan lurking in the wings.
There's a mystery there.
I guess this is question time now,
I
right?
won't lurk. I'll come right out. We're going to take some questions from everyone. So we're going to bring the house lights up and take some questions from our wonderful panel. If anybody, we have people in the aisles with microphones. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand and we'll get the microphone to you. We have one right down here.
Thank you.
And if you could please stand so we can hear you a little bit better.
How popular would unsolved mysteries be, or do we have enough in real life?
Great question. Are there such things as unsolved?
Well, those you can get on your own.
I think people want the wrap-up. They want the sense of satisfaction at the end to find out what happened. And
Yeah,
like
we're
Justin
promising
says,
you
there are
that,
so
aren't
many
we?
unsolved
We're-
mysteries in life.
Yeah,
What?
you're promising them that they're going to find the
I
answer.
think so, that they don't want to feel cheated at the end. To have read through this and there's no solution, I think is just a little bit unsatisfying, really.
Too much like life.
Too much like life, right, yes.
Another question over here?
Okay, I was wondering if you consider yourself more or less likely to incorporate your personal lives into your stories than maybe other genre writers, or if you have any comment on.
You're asking,
do you use your own personal lives and your personal experiences in your fiction? That's probably a question for any author.
There's a risk there. I'm reminded of something Robert Louis Stevenson said when he was hanging out with a rough crowd in his young days in Edinburgh, and he said, the actions of the police magistrate keep changing my circle. And you can't give away too much or you'd end up typing from a cell.
I do think you get your ideas, though, from things that happen to you in life for mysteries. Everything is grist for the mill as a writer, so nothing is lost. And for example, I had an answering machine that broke down, and no, wait a minute, I had two things that happened, but it broke down and I ran out and bought a new one, and I came home and I had to hurry because I had to catch a plane, and I plugged it in and it was used. There were messages on it. I was so mad, but it sounded like it was something illegal, like a drug deal. They had bought the machine, used it, and then returned it. And I was so mad, but then I ended up using it in a story, and I had an aspiring actress in LA, her machine broke and there was a garage sale, so she bought a used machine that there were messages on from a murderer. And I called it For Whom the Beep Tolls. So anyway, so in life I think you always do have to, make lemons, take the lemons and turn them into lemonade. At least as writers we can do that.
Next question.
Yes, you gave an example about with your producer or your editor, rather, not your producer. But is it always black and white? Like at times, like you're talking to your father and he said, "Don't do that," and so you didn't do it. But do you go back and forth with the editor? I mean, until both of you are satisfied? In other events, I did this, but apparently you didn't do that. But in other you do that.
Oh, of course, yes. I mean, in that case, I knew she was right because I didn't feel good about the book. But over smaller things, she'll say, and I said, no, I like that, and we'll go back and forth. I don't give up on everything. But in that sense, I agreed with her because I didn't feel right about it either. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, there's a wonderful old tradition in publishing that basically that the writer is right. You are given charge of your work, unlike, for instance, movies where it's a more collaborative thing. So, yeah, but you negotiate back and forth because if the editor's good,
right,
then they could save you. You'd rather hear it from the editor than read it in the New York Times.
Do you know the how to solve mystery
before you begin writing? Do you muddle through and then come up with it at the end, or do you make an outline and know how it's going to end?
Go ahead. Would you like to go, Justin?
Okay, Carol. After quite a few books, I've come around to believing in outlines. I've come around to believing in knowing the ending and spending the time up front to see if I can get there. And the way I do that is with an outline.
I think that you have to know basically where you're going. I don't know how people can write and then at the end say, okay, who done it? And they decide on the last page. I could never do that. I know generally where I'm going, but the characters start to do things as I'm writing. And I always have a poster board with the days of the week and know when the last scene is going to be, and I work towards that. But I couldn't not know because I just think, I don't know how you could drop clues along the way if you didn't know.
Have you ever changed your mind midway through the book?
About
the end?
Yes, it has evolved, let's say, along the way. Yeah. I mean, not totally, but characters, there can be more than one bad guy in a book, too. So, yes, I'd say it's changed.
Over here. Hi, as authors, how often do you consult forensic scientists and police officers for ideas in your novels?
When necessary, if that's going to be important to the novel. I tend, in the mysteries, I tend to go more toward character than toward that kind of detail. When I write thrillers, I go to heavy detail, and it's great. You'll find the police officer, you'll find the ship captain, you'll find, the oil rig worker, whatever, and learn wonderful stuff. I did a novel a few years ago set in the New York fur trade, and what a fascinating bunch of people I met. Novel, book after book, you could have peopled with them.
Yeah, I don't really use forensics in mine. I'll pick a topic. My new book has country music in it and Irish superstitions, a fiddle that has a curse on it. So I read a lot about Ireland and the legends and read up on country music, and that's what I do more. I don't really use forensics, so I just read a lot on what I'm working on, what the topic is.
Next question.
Yes, I'm interested in children's literature, juvenile mysteries. Have any of you ever written for children? And if not, maybe Priscilla could talk to that topic about writers, juvenile literature.
I've written some stories, short stories about a cat. But, and they're mysteries. The main character is the cat. It's cat point of view. Cat lives on a farm. I wanted to do a mystery on a farm, and I thought, well, who's got time on their hands on a farm? And I did these for adults, and then I did some little volunteer teaching for little kids, like, I don't know, 5th grade, that size child, and used the cat story and found they were enchanted, to my surprise.
Priscilla, are there authors who specialize in children? Is there a genre for children's mysteries?
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting, in my position as sort of being the spider in the middle of an international web of writers. Well, I am.
Yeah.
You just never thought of me that way.
I always did, actually. I just never heard you admit it before.
Well, he actually thinks I'm more like Vlad the Impaler. But it's very interesting to have adult fiction writers attempt to write to a lower level of language use. They, generally speaking, can't do it because we have asked on several occasions to have anthologies where our adult authors would contribute. And again, it's very difficult sometimes for people who write juvenile or young adult to write to a different language level. So you'll find that usually you have authors that write to all of these different ones. Our president, Joan Lowry Nixon, probably is the one who covers the most in range, and writes also Westerns. She did an absolutely brilliant series based on the Orphan Train. And
this is for kids?
For juvenile young adult.
Okay.
That's for young adults. And the nice thing is that once we do this Kids Love a Mystery Week with Barnes & Noble, in the fall we're launching, the first time ever, a series of mystery books that are going to be written to adult interest level, but entry-level reading skills. And it's the first time anybody has ever done basically a primer without a lesson plan attached. So we're really excited about that, as are schools and literacy projects and all of this. I want to see them marketed in the grocery stores next to the beer, but that scares the hell out of the publisher. But it's, he hadn't heard this. There's several things that are sort of subtle that are going on, and I'm sorry to be so business-like, but this is my business. That if you can get the children's interest in reading, no matter how you do it, they're going to grow up to be readers. And kids love mysteries. They're going to grow up and be adult mystery readers.
Always have.
So.
Another question in the back, one or two more.
I was just wondering if you have to do a lot of research for each one of your novels. I had to have in mind the author Dick Francis, who really amazes me with each of his novels, the knowledge that he shows of each different career that he describes. I was wondering how it affects you people.
You know Dick Francis, don't you?
Well, I know that he's got a wonderful program where he basically, I think he waits until May to start a book. And he's a fast writer. He writes the actual book in about 4 months. And then he has 8 months or 7 months to ruminate on the new one, do all that wonderful research that you've noticed, you know, and then get all ready, and then he just sits down and types for 4 months. Sounds like a good life to me.
Another question over here?
This one is for Ms. Clarke. I was just wondering about following the footsteps of Dorothy's mother in the same field. Was it something you always wanted to do? Did your mother say, you must be a history writer?
No.
Did you ever say, oh, I don't want to do the same thing?
No, actually what happened was when I was in college, she was working, she was still working full-time, had finished her first, working at a regular job. Her second book, she didn't know how she was going to get into. Her agent. It was before computers, and I was home from college, and I said, I'll sit down and type it for you. And I did at the kitchen table, and I started taking notes on questions I wanted to ask her, and when she'd come home from work, we'd talk about the plot and the characters. And then when I got out of college, I started studying acting and pursuing a career in that, but I always worked for my mother. So I did that for her for years. And, well, like in one book, Loves Music, Loves to Dance, she has a serial killer in New York who's killing girls through the personal ads. So another, one girl's friend dies, so she starts going out on these dates trying to figure out who killed her friend. So my mother has them meeting in different bars around New York City. And when I was retyping it, I said, Mom, no one goes there, no one goes there. So I changed all the bars. And People magazine said, Clarke offers a well-informed tour of New York singles haunts. So that was my contribution to that book. But I was in Los Angeles, and I did a couple of her books on tape. And someone said to me, you know, have you ever considered writing? You have the background as an actor, which can help, and you've been working with your mother. And so he brought me to Warner Books, and they liked my idea. So my mother had nothing to do with it, and she thought it was great when I did it. And she'd love for my sister to write, and my brother to write now too, but it was just evolved in a weird way.
We'll just take one last question, and then we're... Yes, sir.
I've just finished reading Snow and August by Peter Hamel. And the question I'm asking in regard to this, I don't know if you folks have read it, but I'm very probably you have. The thing that puzzled me is, as an author, he covers two subjects, one, an Irish thing, and also a Jewish thing. Does this, selecting this narrow group, tend to limit the author in his writing?
Look at Angela's Ashes. I don't think so. I think that was universal.
I think the specific is what turns us on when we read, and Mr. Hamill is bringing you a lot of specifics.
Because, again, you have to tell the right story, and if it has some universality about it, it will appeal to a lot of different people, just like Frank's McCourt book, which he won the Pulitzer Prize for. When he wrote that, he never, I've known him for years in New York at these Irish functions, and he just thought he'd write a story and had no idea of the immense appeal it would have. It's not a mystery, but it's so Irish, yet it's been on the bestseller list for a long time now, and a lot of different people are reading it. So I don't think that necessarily has to limit the readership when you pick a certain topic.
We do need to wrap up. Oh, yeah. All right, there's the microphone already. One last question.
I'd like to ask one question to Ms. Clarke and also to Mr. Scott. And we do all understand here tonight that you each are very, very successful in your careers in the genre of mystery writing. However, what I'd like to ask you now is, while you are writing mysteries and or thrillers, do you each aspire to write, or are you writing simultaneously a serious work of fiction or non-fiction that perhaps one day would win, let's say, a Pulitzer Prize or a National Book Award?
You have a secret life as a writer.
Exactly. No, I can only work on one thing at once myself, and it's a lot for me to get my obligation to writing my series, just to have the time for that. So I'm not writing anything at the same time, and who knows down the road what I would end up doing, but for right now I'm sticking to Reagan Riley.
I'm holding out for the Nobel.
That's good.
Before we wrap up this evening, please help me thank our wonderful panel. Also, as many of you know who have attended our symposium events in the past, up until this year, these events were fully funded. This year, they are not. We believe that they are important. The turnout tonight backs up that belief. So we hope that you will help us continue the Humanities series here at Paper Mill. And as you leave tonight, there are envelopes out there, and there are people ready to take your contribution. And we hope that you will continue to support these activities. As you can see from your program, there's a variety coming up this spring, and we're very excited about what we're able to do through this Humanities series, and we hope that you'll continue to support it. We're going to bring the suspects back out on stage and wrap up this evening with a solution. So I'm going to call upon the sergeant to come out. And as I do, I also would like to remind you that we do have books by Justin Scott and Carol Higgins Clarke, and they will be signing them in the lobby, so you don't want to leave just yet. While you were off stage, this telegram arrived for you.
Please, madam, don't interrupt. I'm about to resume my investigation.
Well, but I
Madam, you are impeding the progress of an official police proceeding. Now, while you fine folks were chatting out here, I was able to discern that there were multiple opportunities for Lord Harry to be poisoned. Number one, he took port with all the suspects here at the Mask of Moriarty pub the night of his death. 2, he also took tea earlier in the day with Lady Belsize Park, and drinks and billiards the afternoon before with Lord Hampstead Heath. Everyone had motive, everyone had means, everyone had opportunity. So, until we can exhume the body and determine the exact cause of his lordship's demise, may I suggest we institute a highly unorthodox and possibly dangerous procedure and take a few theories from our audience here tonight. Right. Please, take into account everything you've heard this evening, and please, for heaven's sake, keep your remarks short and to the point. I mean, we don't want to be here all night now, do we? Right.
Don't all raise your hands at once.
Right. All right.
Anyone who has a guess, just wish. Oh, there's one right over here. Great.
Cool.
That envelope.
The answer's in the envelope.
She's the keeper. That's a good one.
Shades of Karnak. Any other? Right here, this young lady.
Okay, I think it's him, Lord Hampstead Heath.
Oh, how tacky of you.
Because he was holding the, that little chalk.
It's called
He was giving
billiards chalk?
information that
I think that's a very common thing to be holding.
Over here, do we have one?
The lady in the red hat, because she was well aware of the fact that he liked a stiff one.
I had to keep bringing that up.
They were referring to port. Anyone else who has a solution? Oh, all the way in the back there.
Oh, right.
One last solution.
I'd like to direct this question to the gentleman standing there with his arms behind his back to hold up his spine. My question, sir, is what language are you speaking in? I would love to learn it so I could talk with you.
You know what? We'll meet in the parking lot after the show and we'll work on it together, all right? Because I don't know where it came from.
No comprende.
Oh, right. Muy bueno.
One last guess down here.
Is it possible that the victim had dinner in Angela's house?
The question was, is it possible that the victim had dinner at Angelo Del Rossi's house? Actually, Angelo is out of town this week, so it is a little suspect. I think perhaps, Sergeant, the time has come.
Right. What's this then?
Well, it's a telegram that arrived while you were backstage.
Why didn't you show this to me before?
I did, before all these people
I should have
opened.
you arrested for withholding evidence. All right. Maybe this will shed some light on the subject.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wish that I could be among you tonight for this august gathering of mystery aficionados, but both Dr. Watson and myself are kindly appearing stateside in a comical interlude titled The Mask of Moriarty. Acting is a most tiresome effort, to be sure, but the public crave my presence, so I'm afraid I'm forced to oblige. I do hope you can pay us a visit. As to the strange case of the Victoria Diamond, I feel certain that Lord Harry's killer can easily be brought to justice without waiting for the official coroner's report. Lord Harry's rightful paranoia about being murdered are evidenced by his delivering a sealed envelope and the diamond over to Mrs. Carnaby at the Mask and Mine Pub that fateful evening. His obvious state of ill health, witnessed by all the suspects and remarked on by Mrs. Carnaby upon his arrival, and Miss Vaughan upon his exit, indicates that any poison was probably introduced earlier in the day and was not contained in the port that everyone drank that night. That leaves his billiard game with Lord Heath and his tea with his sister as possible opportunities for murder. Lady Belsize Park earlier remarked that Lord Harry was in the habit of stirring his tea with his little finger, the most tactless habit to be sure, and one that unfortunately proved fatal to his lordship. The odd observation that Lord Harry died clutching billiard chalk strikes me not merely as a symbol of his devotion to a marvellous pastime, which I occasionally indulge in myself, but the pointed finger of incrimination. Upon closer examination, I think we will find that Lord Hampstead Heath, a well-travelled and scientifically well-educated man with unlimited means, baited the Q-chalk with a form of poison, mixed with graphite and talc. Lord Harry carried traces of that deadly billiard game with him everywhere he went that day, including to the home of his sister, Lady Belsize Park, where he consumed tea. Tea stirred with a finger still redolent of Q-chalk from the afternoon's game. But why did Lord Heath kill his best friend for the Victoria Diamond, when he could well afford 10 such diamonds? He was a jilted man. His affections towards the young American actress Miss Vaughan were returned with cold rudeness on her. Lord Heath was not used to rejection and was a rather sore loser, I'm afraid. In love, as well as gambling. But if Lord Heath didn't want the diamond, who did? You made an unfortunate slip earlier this evening, Lady Belsize Park, by calling Lord Heath by the dreadfully informal moniker Hammy. From some of your station, it was an unlikely display of familiarity in a public venue such as this. You, Lady Belsize Park, admittedly wanted the diamond. You always resented that it was left to your brother, and your bank records prove that you were in desperate financial straits, even turning to pawnbrokers. Don't bother to deny it. I saw you in that very same dress at the opera last Tuesday. Yes. You were inviting your brother to tea, knowing full well that his nasty habit would do him in. You and Lord Heath really should have been more discreet. Even though you are a widow, Lord Heath a bachelor, conspiring murderers should avoid sitting together in the best box at the opera. And how can I deduce all this, you might well ask, without my being even present this evening? Well, I'm afraid it's all rather elementary. I'm still now, but if you're in search of rooting to an evening at the theatre, do drop by a little hamlet called Milburn, New Jersey. Watson and I will be happy to see you.
Signed, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
The wild and implausible ravings of an opium-soaked imagination, Sergeant.
Stuff and nonsense. The man's mad. It's common knowledge.
Come now, you don't seriously expect me to doubt the word of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, now do you?
But what about the Victoria Diamond, Sergeant?
Mrs. Carnaby holds the answer to that.
He always wanted you to have it, miss.
All good things come to she who waits, eh, Sergeant?
Truer word was never spoke, miss.
There's a reason Lord Harry's intentions towards you were so righteous, miss. A good and sound reason, which I may now disclose. He was your father.
What? I never knew my father. I'm an orphan from New Jersey. I was raised at the Newark Home for Wayward Girls.
He sent you there when you was born, love. She forced him into it, she did. Lady Belsize Park was afraid of what people would think if a bachelor toff like Harry was to support the baby of a simple, lower-class barmaid.
Barmaid?
Back then, I was just a weary bar wench. But now I runs the old operation, lock, stock, and barrel.
Do you mean Mother?
I was a child bride.
Oh, I do love a happy, if somewhat contrived ending.
Oh, thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for everything. Come and see me, Sergeant. I'll reserve you the royal box.
Why, Miss Thorne?
Angela.
Right, Angela. And you two, come along, you lot. It's the Old Bailey for you both.
The Old Bailey?
But we've got opera tickets!
Oh, and you. Make sure you put a little something in those baskets on your way out the door. The rental on this hall is something outrageous.
All's well that ends well, eh, Angela? Mother, that's Shakespeare. You're a natural actress. I'm going to see if there's a part for you in The Prick of the Thorn.
Me? On the stage? Well, who would have thought it, eh?
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon. Please join us in the lobby, and we'll have our book signing. Thank you again, and good night.